I used to live in a quiet cul-de-sac in a suburban area of North Carolina, the kind of place where nothing ever happens and neighbors wave at each other without ever really talking. It was mostly retirees and young couples, the kind of neighborhood where the weirdest thing you'd expect to see is someone forgetting to bring their trash bins in. At the time, I was working a remote job in tech support. I'm a night owl, so I'd stay up late watching TV, gaming, or scrolling TikTok until the early hours of the morning. My desk was set up in the front room, where I had a clear view of our front lawn and driveway through a wide living room window. That's how I saw him the first time. It was about 2:40 a.m. on a Thursday. I remember because I had just finished a late ticket for a customer and was about to grab a soda from the kitchen when I saw movement outside. I paused, thinking maybe it was a neighbor getting home late or a raccoon going through a trash can. But when I looked out, I saw a man standing completely still at the edge of my driveway. He was facing the house, maybe 20 feet away. The porch light didn't quite reach him, so I couldn't make out his face, just the shape of him. Tall, maybe over 6 feet, wearing what looked like a heavy coat or jacket. He wasn't moving, just standing there like he was waiting for something. I stared for a good 10 seconds, not blinking, trying to figure out if he was just some drunk guy who got lost or maybe someone who needed help. I even thought about opening the door, but something about the way he stood there, too still, made my chest tighten. I blinked and he was gone, not walked away, not turned the corner. Just gone. Like I had imagined it. I even opened the front door and looked around. Nothing. I told myself it had to be a trick of the light, maybe a shadow from a passing car or a neighbor's motion sensor going off. I was tired after all. Probably overthinking it, but the next night it happened again. Same time, almost exactly 2:40 a.m. I was watching a YouTube video when I noticed something in the corner of my eye. I turned toward the window, and there he was. Again, same spot, same posture, same thick coat, just standing there, facing my house. This time, I didn't hesitate. I flicked on the porch light and walked to the door, but by the time I opened it, he was already gone. No footsteps, no rustling, just an empty driveway and silence. At this point, I knew something was off. I stayed up the rest of the night, watching that spot, half expecting him to come back, but nothing happened. I didn't sleep much after that. The third night is when things got really bad. This time, it was earlier, about 2:15 a.m. I was lying on the couch, trying to fall asleep with a podcast playing in the background when I heard the sound of gravel crunching. It was faint, but I knew it immediately. The driveway. I sat up slowly and looked out the window, and sure enough, he was there. Only this time, he was closer, halfway up the driveway, closer to the porch. Still not moving, still facing the house. But what scared me more than anything else was that I could now see his face, sort of. Or more like the absence of a face. It wasn't that he was wearing a mask or anything, it was just blurred, like TV static, like something your eyes couldn't quite focus on no matter how hard you tried. The longer I stared, the sicker I felt. Like my brain wasn't supposed to be looking at whatever I was seeing. I reached for my phone to take a photo, maybe to zoom in, maybe just to prove to myself that I wasn't losing it. But when I looked back up, he was standing at the bottom of my porch steps. That close. No footsteps, no movement. Just closer. I backed away from the window and turned off every light in the house. My breathing was shaky and I could feel sweat on the back of my neck even though the room was cold. I sat in total darkness, gripping my phone, thinking I should call the cops, but what would I even say? There's a guy standing outside my house and he teleports when I'm not looking. I waited until the sky began to lighten before I dared to move. When I finally peeked outside, he was gone again. No footprints in the dewy grass, no tire marks, nothing. I told my sister about it the next day. She told me I needed to get a camera, so I ordered one of those motion-activated doorbell cams and some cheap security lights. They arrived the following afternoon, and I installed everything immediately. That night, I stayed awake with the monitor app open on my phone. At exactly 2:41 a.m., the motion alert went off. My heart slammed into my chest. I tapped the notification, and the camera feed loaded. The screen glitched for half a second, and then he was there, standing dead center in the frame. Only this time, he was staring straight into the camera. No motion, just standing, like he'd been waiting for me to look. Then the screen glitched again, and he was gone.
Not faded out, not walked away, just static, and then nothing. I sat frozen on my couch for what felt like forever. Eventually, I managed to rewind the footage, but the moment it reached that part, it froze. The app crashed. When I tried to open it again, it said, "Camera not connected." I went outside the next morning and checked it. The camera had been ripped off the wall, not unscrewed, ripped. There were deep scratch marks around the door frame, thin but long, 4 of them, like claw marks. I didn't sleep at all the next few nights. I left all the lights on. I even considered sleeping at a friend's place, but some part of me wanted to face it, to understand it. The last night I saw him was the worst. It was storming, hard rain, wind, distant thunder. I figured maybe that would keep whatever this was away, but at 2:39 a.m., every light in my house flickered. Once, twice, and then went out completely. I stood in the dark, barely breathing. The wind outside was howling, but I heard something else beneath it, tapping. At the living room window, I didn't want to look. Every instinct told me not to, but I turned my head. He was right there, face inches from the glass, his head tilted slightly like he was curious. And then I heard it, his voice. But it wasn't from outside. It was behind me. Just a whisper, "Let me in." I ran, not to the door, not to the bedroom, straight out the back, through the rain, no shoes. I didn't stop running until I was 3 blocks away, at a 24-hour gas station. I must have looked insane, wet, barefoot, trembling. The attendant let me stay inside until morning. I told them someone had tried to break in. They called the cops for me, but when I brought the officers back to the house, there was nothing. No signs of forced entry, no scratch marks. The broken camera was gone. All they found were wet footprints on the hardwood, leading from the back door to the living room. But here's the thing, the prints weren't mine. I know that because I never came back inside. To this day, I don't know what I saw. I moved 2 months later. New town, new apartment, 2nd floor, no yard, no windows that face the street. I still stay up late sometimes, and every now and then, I catch myself checking the time. And when it's 2:40 a.m., I never, ever look out the window. I lived in a small rental house a few years ago, just outside a town called Newburgh in upstate New York. The kind of place that looks quiet from the outside but always feels like something's off. I had moved there to get out of the city after a breakup, needed space, needed air, and I didn't mind the isolation. The house was a tiny 2-bedroom, a little rundown but cheap, and the landlord seemed normal enough. It sat on a narrow road that backed up into woods. No neighbors in sight unless you really squinted. The house had 2 floors, but I only used the downstairs. The 2nd floor wasn't part of the lease. The landlord told me it was just old storage space. I didn't think twice about it. For the first couple weeks, everything was fine. Cold, yeah, New York winters are brutal, but nothing unusual. I spent most nights on the couch with my laptop,
writing blog posts and drinking gas station coffee. Then one night, maybe 3 weeks in, I was brushing my teeth before bed when I heard it. Footsteps above me, not creaky pipes or house-settling sounds. Literal, deliberate footsteps across the ceiling. I froze, toothbrush in hand, just listening. At first, I tried to reason it out. Maybe an animal got into the attic. But these were too heavy. They had weight. And they were slow, like someone pacing. I stood there for maybe a full minute, just holding my breath. Then silence. The next morning, I called the landlord, told him what I heard. He laughed and said the second floor was sealed up, had been for years. He even joked, if someone's up there, I'd be charging them rent. That was supposed to make me feel better. It didn't. The next few nights were quiet again, and I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Sleep deprivation maybe, stress, the usual excuses, but then it came back. This time I was in bed, around 2 a.m., and it started again, soft footsteps above me, moving from one side of the room to the other. I sat up, heart racing, and stared at the ceiling like I could somehow see through it. And then, this is the part that still gives me chills, it stopped directly above my bed. Not a sound, just stillness. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I climbed up to the second floor. The door was locked, but I found the key in a drawer the landlord had left behind. I figured maybe a raccoon or something really did get in. I opened the door and was immediately hit with that cold, musty air smell. The staircase was narrow and steep, and when I got to the top, the whole space was just empty. Dusty hardwood, a couple old trunks, some yellowed newspapers from the 70s. But what stood out most was the feeling. It felt wrong, like the air was heavier, like someone had just been there. I left everything as it was and went back down, locking the door behind me. That night I tried to sleep with a podcast playing, something to drown out the silence. It worked for a while, until around 2:45 a.m. That's when the footsteps started again, but this time they weren't above me, they were on the stairs. One slow step at a time, coming down. I stared at my bedroom door, praying I was imagining it. Then a soft knock. 3 times. Not loud. Almost polite. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I must have sat like that for 2 hours, waiting for the sun to rise. The next morning I texted the landlord and said I was hearing things again. This time he didn't laugh. He said, and I quote, "You're not the first tenant to say something like that." When I asked what he meant, he just told me the last couple renters hadn't stayed more than a few months and that the upstairs had been problematic. But he wouldn't go into details. I didn't want to know anymore. I just wanted it to stop. But it didn't. The knocking became regular, every few nights, always between 2:30 and 3 a.m., always 3 soft knocks on the bedroom door. Never louder, never trying the handle, just knocking. I started sleeping with a chair propped under the doorknob like I was in some cheap motel. I told a friend about it and he offered to stay over one night. I figured having someone else there might ease my nerves or maybe prove I was just going nuts. That night, we stayed up watching movies. Nothing happened. I felt stupid actually, but then around 2:40, the TV screen glitched. Just for a second, like the picture jumped, and my friend turned to me and said, "Did you hear that?" Footsteps above us, then down the stairs. Then 3 knocks. He looked at me with this dead serious expression and said, "I heard it." I 100% heard that. We didn't sleep that night. He never came back after that. The next week, I noticed something new. The upstairs light, the one above the stairwell, was on. I hadn't turned it on. I hadn't even been up there again. I got a broom handle and tried to reach the switch from below, but it was stuck, like someone had locked it into the on position. That light stayed on for days.
Then, one night, I woke up to the sound of something dragging across the floor above me, like furniture. I lost it. I threw on my coat and drove to a motel, didn't even pack a bag. I called the landlord from the parking lot and told him I was leaving. I didn't want my deposit back. I didn't want anything. I just wanted out. His response? I understand. That was it. The house sat empty for almost a year after I left. I checked once out of curiosity and saw it listed again. Charming 2-bedroom, country charm, updated plumbing. Nothing about the upstairs. A month later, I saw a moving truck outside. Someone else had moved in. About a week after that, I got a message request on Facebook. It was from the new tenant. I have no idea how she found me, but her message said, "Hi, sorry to bother you. Did you used to live at address? I found your name on a piece of mail left behind. Can I ask you something weird? Did anything ever happen upstairs?" I never responded. I don't want to know what's still happening in that house. All I know is, whatever's up there, it never wanted to be alone, and it knows how to wait. Back when I used to travel for work, I stayed in a lot of motels. The kind with faded signs and questionable plumbing. The ones that smell like cigarette ash and cheap detergent no matter how non-smoking your room is. I didn't mind though. When you're on the road enough, you stop noticing that stuff. This story happened about 7 years ago. I was driving through Arizona for a sales trip, some industrial equipment expo out in Tucson. I was a day early, so I decided to get off the highway, avoid the overpriced chain hotels, and stay the night in a little town called Redfield. Population, only 1,000. You blink, you miss it. But they had this old mom-and-pop style motel off the main road, Redfield Motor Inn. I remember the sign was flickering like something out of a horror movie, but it was late and I was too tired to care. I pulled in and went to the front desk. A woman in her 60s with curlers in her hair greeted me. Real sweet, a little too chipper for 11:45 at night. She handed me the key to room 209, second floor, and said something I didn't quite catch as I was heading out the door. It sounded like, "Don't mind the neighbors." I thought she meant noise or maybe kids. Whatever. Room 209 was at the far end of the top floor, right near the corner. The hallway was quiet, carpet smelled moldy, but again, motel. I let myself in, tossed my bag on the bed, and immediately noticed something weird. The air felt heavy, like it hadn't been moved in a while. The thermostat was working, but it still felt thick. Still. I turned on the TV to drown it out, took a shower, ordered some takeout from the only diner still delivering that late. Everything seemed fine, until I tried to sleep. I turned off the lights around 1:30 a.m. and climbed into bed, but just as I started to drift off, I heard something. Whispers. At first, I thought it was the TV. I had left the volume really low, but when I turned to look, it was already off. Just the blank blue screen glowing faintly in the dark. The whispering didn't stop. It was coming from behind the wall, near the headboard. I leaned in, thinking maybe the room next door had thin walls, but the voices didn't sound like a conversation. It was more like one voice, whispering something over and over again, low, fast, almost like chanting. I banged the wall once, lightly, out of instinct. The whispering stopped, and then something whispered right back through the wall. Just 2 words, "Don't knock." I sat straight up in bed. Every hair on my body stood up. It didn't sound like a TV. It didn't sound like someone playing a prank. It was a voice, low and raspy, speaking directly through the drywall. I didn't sleep that night. By the time the sun came up, I was packed and ready to leave, but I still had time to kill before my check-in in Tucson, so I figured I'd stop by the front desk and let the woman know that someone in the room next to mine might have been messing around. She looked up from her crossword and raised an eyebrow when I mentioned it. Then she asked what room I was in. 209, I said. Her face changed completely. That forced smile dropped. She looked down, scribbled something on her notepad, and just said, "Nobody's been in 210 for months." She didn't elaborate, didn't offer to explain, just stared at me like she wanted me to stop asking questions. I left. Drove 2 hours in complete silence trying to forget about it, but 2 nights later, at the expo, it came back. I was staying in a Hilton this time, modern, busy, completely different vibe. I was half asleep in my room, TV on in the background, when I heard something familiar. A whisper. At first I thought it was coming from the hallway, but when I muted the TV, I realized it was right behind me, in the vent above the bed. Same voice, same rasp, same phrase. "Don't knock." I left the hotel that night, drove until morning, slept in my car in a Walmart parking lot just to feel like I wasn't alone. I tried to be rational, told myself maybe it was a hallucination from lack of sleep. Stress, a weird coincidence. But the next morning I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the outside of my suitcase, scratched lightly into the fabric, were 3 small lines. Straight, vertical, like claw marks. I never went back to Redfield, and I've avoided motels ever since. But here's the part that still messes with me. About a year later, I was in a different part of Arizona for work. Different company, different life, honestly. I stopped for gas at a small station and went inside to grab a coffee. As I was checking out, I noticed a bulletin board by the bathroom, missing persons posters, local events, a couple of motel business cards. One caught my eye, a weathered flyer with faded text and a black and white photo of a man. The headline read, "Still missing, last seen at Redfield Motor Inn, room 210. I told myself it was just coincidence, that I was tired, that the mind plays tricks when it wants to. But some nights, when I'm alone in a hotel or scrolling channels in a dim room, I swear, if I let the volume drop low enough, I can still hear it, whispering from the vents. Don't knock. And I don't. Not ever again. I used to work the night shift at a 24-hour laundromat just outside of Cincinnati. It was one of those no-name places tucked between a pawn shop and a boarded-up Thai restaurant. Honestly, it was the kind of job you take when you're between real options. I was 22, broke, and going through a rough patch after dropping out of college. The job itself wasn't terrible. Just long hours, lots of folding towels people never came back for, and wiping down machines that leaked God knows what. Most nights were dead. Occasionally you'd get a drunk guy coming in to sober up, or an exhausted mom waiting for a dryer cycle to finish while her kids slept in the car. But most of the time, I'd just sit behind the counter, drink stale coffee, and watch videos on my phone with the volume low. This happened back in January of 2022. It was a Wednesday night, freezing cold, the kind where your nose hurts when you breathe in. The snow had mostly turned into that gross gray slush, and the strip mall was dead quiet. I remember checking the clock. It was just past 2 a.m. The only customer that night had left about 20 minutes earlier, and I was thinking about closing early, even though I technically wasn't supposed to. I had just finished restocking dryer sheets and was scrolling through TikTok when the buzzer above the front door went off. A new customer. At first, I didn't see anyone come in. The glass door had swung open, then slowly shut, but no one appeared right away. I figured maybe someone was outside struggling with a laundry basket or pulling in a cart.
But after about 10 seconds of just silence, a man stepped into view. He was wearing a red hoodie, the kind with the drawstrings pulled tight so you couldn't really see his face. The hood was up and he had on a pair of sunglasses. Yes, sunglasses. At 2 a.m. in the middle of winter. Right away I got a weird feeling. It wasn't fear exactly, just alertness. Like when your body knows something's wrong before your mind catches up. He didn't say anything. Just walked past the folding tables and sat down on one of the plastic chairs lining the wall. No laundry basket, no bag, just him. That in itself was weird. People don't come to laundromats at 2 a.m. to hang out. I gave him a nod, the polite kind you give strangers, and he didn't react, didn't move. He just sat there, staring straight ahead. After a few seconds, I looked away and pretended to be busy behind the counter. Every so often I'd peek up, and he was still there. Same posture, same direction. Still as a statue, I told myself he was probably homeless and just trying to get out of the cold. Which, fine, but the sunglasses and the hood still threw me off. About 10 minutes went by like that, then he stood up. He didn't walk toward any of the machines, he didn't go to the coin changer, he just stood there, turned toward the door, and walked out. No eye contact, no words. Just gone. I watched him disappear into the darkness and figured that was the end of it. Weird, but not the weirdest thing I'd seen at that job. But then, maybe 30 minutes later, the buzzer went off again. Same door, same pause, same guy, red hoodie, hood up, sunglasses still on. This time he didn't go to the wall. He just stood inside the entrance and stared directly at the counter, at me. I looked up from my phone, startled, and instinctively asked, "Can I help you?" He didn't move. Just stood there, not saying a word. The glass door slowly swung shut behind him, and for a split second, I could hear how loud the wind was outside. Then silence again. We just stared at each other. I couldn't see his eyes behind the sunglasses, but I felt watched. Not glanced at, watched. Something about the way he stood. His shoulders were a little too high, like he was tensing every muscle in his body. It was subtle, but I could see his arms twitch just slightly like he was holding back motion. I asked again, "Sir, do you need something?" Still nothing, no sound. Then slowly, very slowly, he raised his left hand and pointed directly at me. I didn't know what to do. I froze. For a second, I honestly thought it might be some messed up prank, like he was filming a TikTok or trying to scare me for YouTube content. I stood up behind the counter and said, "Okay, man, I'm gonna need you to leave." And just like that, he turned around and walked out again. No drama, no words. Just gone. This time, I locked the door behind him. I tried to laugh it off, told myself maybe he was high, or had mental health issues, or maybe he really was just some viral prank guy with a camera stuffed in his pocket. Either way, I wasn't about to take chances. I called my manager, let it ring twice, then hung up. It was late. I figured I'd just ride it out and close up in 30, but the weirdest part came next morning. I got home around 4 a.m., crashed, and didn't wake up until noon. I had a couple missed calls from an unknown number and a voicemail.
When I played it, it was mostly just static, a quiet buzz of white noise that lasted about 10 seconds. But at the very end, barely audible, I swear I heard it, a voice whispered, "You saw me." I played it over and over again, same thing every time. The whisper was faint, distorted, but real. I checked the number. It was a weird, out-of-state area code, one I didn't recognize. When I tried to call back, it was disconnected. Now here's the part I still don't like talking about. That night, after I got that voicemail, I couldn't sleep. I felt like I was being watched. I kept glancing toward my bedroom window.
Eventually, I forced myself to pull the curtains shut and laid down, trying to ignore how tense I felt. At exactly 2:43 a.m., I heard a knock on the front door of my apartment. 3 slow knocks. I live alone. No one knows my address except close friends and work. And nobody would be visiting me at that time. No one. I stayed frozen in bed, heart hammering, waiting for it to stop. Eventually it did. When I finally worked up the courage to check the peephole about 10 minutes later, there was no one there, but on my doormat, someone had left something. It was a coin, a single laundromat token. Our laundromat doesn't even use tokens. We use quarters. I didn't go into work the next day. I didn't go the day after that either. I quit that job, didn't give 2 weeks, didn't care. And here's what really gets under my skin. About 2 weeks later, I was scrolling Reddit, just wasting time, reading through weird encounter threads. One post caught my eye. Someone in northern Kentucky, not even an hour away from me, described a man in a red hoodie and sunglasses showing up outside their apartment building multiple nights in a row, standing still, saying nothing. A few comments down, someone else chimed in, said they saw a man like that in a library, just stood in the entrance for 20 minutes. Never moved, just watched. It keeps me up at night, wondering if other people have had the same encounter and never said anything, or if I was just the unlucky one who got followed. I still have that token. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe part of me wants proof that I didn't make this up, that I didn't imagine it. Because sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear it again. 3 knocks, same time, same rhythm, and once. I think I heard breathing just outside my window, but when I look, there's nothing there. Just the sound of the wind and the feeling that someone's waiting. My name's Kayla, and this happened when I was 19 during my second semester of community college. I was working part-time as a janitor at this small office park just outside of Boise, Idaho. It was one of those quiet business complexes with a dentist, a law office, a shipping center, nothing crazy. My job was simple: show up after hours, clean the offices, vacuum, take out the trash, mop the break rooms. The pay wasn't great, but it let me work alone and listen to music or podcasts while I cleaned. I actually liked the peace and quiet. Until one night I realized I wasn't as alone as I thought. This happened in early March. It was still freezing out, snow piled up along the sidewalks, and the parking lot lights buzzed like old bug zappers. I had just started my shift around 9:30 p.m. and entered the main lobby like I always did. Keys jangling, air stale from the heating system. That night, the only office with lights still on was the accounting firm at the end of the hall. That wasn't unusual. They stayed late during tax season, but by the time I finished the first 2 buildings and circled back an hour later, the lights were off. Everyone had gone home. I started vacuuming that hallway like I always did, looping around the water cooler, past the snack machines, toward the copy room. That was when I noticed something strange. There was a can of Diet Dr. Pepper half crushed and sitting under the vending machine, like someone had dropped it and shoved it out of sight. I figured I'd grab it last and moved on. But as I passed it a second time, this is the part that stuck with me. I swear I saw it move. Just a tiny shift, like something under the machine nudged it. I turned off the vacuum and crouched down. I figured maybe a rat had gotten in. Wouldn't have been the first time, but when I got low to the ground and peeked under the machine, I didn't see a rat. I saw something else. 2 eyes. Wide, reflective, human-shaped, but set too low to the ground. They were just there, Watching me from underneath the vending machine, I stumbled back so fast I nearly tripped over the vacuum cord. I just stood there, staring. The gap under the vending machine was maybe 6 inches tall. No one should be able to fit under there. It had to be a trick of the light, maybe a weird angle with my flashlight. I told myself that. I wanted to believe that. I approached again, slower this time, and angled my flashlight under the machine. Nothing. Just dust in the crushed soda can. I tried to laugh it off. "Great," I said out loud. "You're officially losing it." But the feeling didn't go away. It felt like I was being watched. The whole time I finished that hallway, every light seemed dimmer than usual. Every sound felt like it had an echo. I kept turning around, expecting someone to be there. At one point, I caught myself whispering under my breath, just to hear my own voice. I don't even remember what I was saying, just trying to break the silence. By the time I got to the far end of the building, I was shaking. I gave up on finishing the bathrooms and skipped straight to emptying the trash bins at the back exit. That's when I noticed the door to the janitor's closet, the one I always locked, was cracked open. That closet's where we keep the cleaning chemicals and supplies. I always double-check it when I clock in. Always. And I always lock it back up. But now it was ajar, just slightly. I felt my pulse pick up. I took a few steps forward and called out, "Hello?" No answer. I should have walked away, called security, left the building, but instead, like a total idiot, I stepped forward and pulled the door fully open. Empty. Just shelves of cleaning spray, paper towels, bleach, mop buckets. But then I noticed something that made my stomach twist. Handprints on the inside of the door. They were faint, streaky, like someone had touched it with dirty fingers. Low to the ground, too, lower than a person would normally reach. I locked the door and got out of that hallway fast. I practically ran back to the main lobby and sat down behind the front desk, trying to convince myself it had to be another janitor who'd used the closet before me. Or maybe a client left it unlocked. But deep down, I didn't believe that. Because as I sat behind that desk, trying to calm down, I heard something that made my skin go cold. The vending machine dropped a can. I knew for a fact that no one was in that hallway. I hadn't heard footsteps. No one had put in money. And yet, thunk, a soda hit the tray. I waited. Another thunk. Another. 3 cans. Dropped one after the other, like invisible hands were pressing the buttons. I didn't even go check. I grabbed my jacket, left the vacuum where it was, and ran to my car. I didn't go back the next night. I called in sick. Honestly, I almost quit then and there. But I needed the job. When I finally went back 3 nights later, it was a Saturday, and the building was totally empty. I made it through most of the shift without incident, but when I passed the vending machine again, I stopped cold, because on the floor in front of it, lined up perfectly, were 3 cans. 1 Diet Dr. Pepper, 1 Sprite, 1 orange soda, each untouched, still sealed. I hadn't cleaned them up. No one else had been there. No one else had a key to that hallway except me and my supervisor. I asked him about it a few days later, told him the vending machine had been acting weird. He just raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh, that thing. Yeah, the guy who fills it says it drains power even when it's off. Must be faulty wiring." I wanted to push him further, ask if anyone had ever seen something back there, but I didn't, because I was afraid he might say yes. I lasted 2 more weeks at that job. Nothing major happened, but the vending machine kept doing little things, dropping cans when no one was near, making whirring noises like it was running even when unplugged. One time I found the soda tray filled with coins, all of them foreign, Canadian, European, even some I couldn't recognize. I still don't know what I saw under that machine. Maybe it really was a rat and I imagined the eyes. Maybe it was a prank. Or maybe, just maybe, something lives under there, something small enough to hide, smart enough to wait, and curious enough to watch. I think about that sometimes, especially when I walk past vending machines in other buildings, at school, at work, even at the grocery store. Every time I see one, I glance underneath, and I swear, every now and then, I catch something glinting back. This happened in the summer of 2021, and to be honest, I still don't talk about it much. Not because I'm embarrassed or anything, but because I still don't have an explanation for what happened. None of it makes sense. Not really. I was 27 at the time, working as a delivery driver for a small grocery chain in upstate New York. Nothing glamorous, just long hours, a beat-up van, and a clipboard with addresses. Most of our deliveries were to elderly customers who couldn't drive anymore or busy parents who didn't want to drag their kids to the store. Most nights, I finished up by 9 p.m. But on Thursdays, we did late drop-offs, and I usually didn't clock out until closer to 11. That's how I ended up out near this weird little dead-end road called Pine Hollow Circle. It was one of those half-developed neighborhoods, like they started building houses and then just stopped after a few. Most of the homes looked half lived in. One had boarded windows. Another didn't have a mailbox. Honestly, I didn't even think anyone still lived out there. But sure enough, my last drop that night was a place at the very end of the circle. A small 2-bedroom rental with peeling green paint and a cracked driveway. The porch light was on, though, which was a good sign. I pulled up around 10:45 p.m., cut the engine, grabbed the bag of groceries, and walked up to the porch. Right as I was about to knock, the door opened. A man stood there, maybe late 40s, early 50s, balding, heavy-set, wearing an old gray sweatshirt and jeans. Nothing too unusual, except he looked kind of surprised to see me. Not, "I forgot I ordered groceries," surprised. More like, "I didn't expect you to actually show up," surprised. I gave a polite nod and held out the bag. "Delivery for, Mr. Langston." He hesitated, then nodded and reached for the groceries. But here's the part that stuck with me. He never looked at the bag, not once. His eyes stayed locked on me the entire time, wide, unblinking. Like he was studying my face, or memorizing it. I tried to shake it off. Probably just an awkward guy, but then he said something that still makes my stomach twist. He goes, "You should leave right after this. Don't wait in the van." I kind of laughed awkwardly. Yeah, gotta get back to the store." But he just stared at me, didn't smile, didn't move. So I turned and walked back to the van a little faster than before. I didn't look back. I got in, locked the doors, and pulled away. That should have been the end of it. But about halfway down the road, maybe 100 feet from his house, I realized something strange. There were no cars in the driveway, none parked along the curb, no garage, nothing, which wouldn't be weird except the guy had somehow gotten groceries delivered with no car. This place was over 30 minutes from the nearest store. No buses, no Uber, no bike out front, no delivery account note saying no car or call ahead. Just a regular order from someone who shouldn't have been able to place it in the first place. I slowed down a bit, debating whether to turn around and double check, but something in my gut told me to keep driving. I didn't even finish logging the delivery on the app until I was back on the main road. That's when I saw the note. In the delivery instructions field, one I hadn't checked before, it said, "Don't stay on the street after 11. It comes down from the woods." I stopped cold, pulled off to the shoulder, reread it twice. What comes down from the woods? I wanted to believe it was a prank. A bored guy trying to mess with the delivery drivers. But then I noticed something else. The timestamp on the order, 10:59 p.m., which means he had placed the order less than 60 seconds before I arrived. There's no way he could have done that unless he knew I was coming, unless he was watching the road, waiting until I got close. It was like he timed it down to the second. That was enough for me. I turned the phone off and drove straight back to the warehouse. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not that night, but about a week later I got curious. I pulled up the delivery log to look at the address. The system said the order had been canceled. No history, no customer account, just gone. Like the whole thing never happened. So I did some digging. I searched the address online, looked at old property records, county tax info. That house? It had been vacant since 2018. The owner passed away. It was listed as uninhabitable due to black mold and structural issues. No electricity, no gas. There shouldn't have been anyone living there. And yet I'd seen someone, spoken to him, handed him groceries. I don't know who he was, or what he meant about it coming down from the woods. I don't even know if he lived there. For all I know, he wasn't supposed to be there either. But every now and then, I still have dreams about that road. It's always the same. I'm driving down Pine Hollow Circle, headlights cutting through the trees, and I see him standing at the edge of the woods. Same gray sweatshirt, same wide eyes. But this time he's not looking at me. He's looking behind me, and whatever he's staring at, I never want to see it. I lived in a mid-rise apartment complex for about 3 years while finishing up my graduate degree. It wasn't fancy. Old carpets, creaky elevators, weird smells in the hallway, but the rent was manageable, and it was in a decent part of town. Just a block from a bus stop and walking distance to a decent sandwich shop, which was enough for me. The building was shaped like a square with a courtyard in the center, and I was on the second floor, right above the laundry room. Not the quietest spot, but I got used to the thud of machines spinning at all hours. My unit faced the courtyard, so my windows looked out at other windows, a setup that made it hard to avoid your neighbors. You'd see them smoking on their balconies, arguing with their partners, watching TV late at night. Eventually you start learning their routines without meaning to. There was this guy in apartment 3B, directly across from mine, 1 floor up. I never knew his name, but I used to call him Sweatpants Guy in my head because that's all he ever wore. Always the same gray ones, even in summer. He was maybe in his early 30s. Pale, skinny, patchy facial hair. I'd see him out on his balcony a lot, smoking, drinking orange Gatorade, sometimes just standing there for long stretches like he was waiting for something. He never waved, never smiled, just watched. I didn't think much of it at first. Some people are just awkward, you know. Not everyone wants to be social. I've been guilty of that too. Slipping past neighbors in the hall with my headphones in, avoiding small talk. No big deal. But one night, things shifted. It was about 9:30. I was getting ready for bed, brushing my teeth with the bathroom door open so I could still hear the dumb reality show playing in the background. I walked into the living room to turn the TV off and happened to glance out the window. There he was, Sweatpants Guy, standing at the edge of his balcony, completely still, staring directly into my window. Now that wasn't unusual in itself. Our windows faced each other and sometimes people just, glance around. But this wasn't that. His body was angled toward me, arms limp at his sides. No cigarette, no drink, no movement. Just watching. I froze in place. Toothbrush still in my mouth. After a few seconds, I stepped to the side, out of view, and peeked around the curtain again. He was still there, still staring. That was the first time I felt it, that drop in your stomach when you realize something is off, but your brain hasn't caught up yet. I closed the blinds and tried to shake it off. Maybe he was zoning out. Maybe he didn't even realize he was looking directly at me. That happens, right? I didn't sleep well that night. After that, I started noticing him more. Always at the window. Always when I was home, I'd get back from class, set my backpack down, glance out the window, and there he'd be. Standing in the exact same spot, no phone, no expression. Watching. It started messing with my head. I tried keeping my blinds shut, but I hate living in the dark. I like natural light during the day, and having everything closed made my apartment feel like a cave. Still, I kept them drawn more often than not. When I did leave them open, I'd catch glimpses of him, quick flicks of movement behind his glass, like he was waiting for me to slip up. It wasn't long before I started hearing things too. At first, it was small stuff. A knock at the door when no one was there. Footsteps in the hallway late at night. Once I got home to find my doormat flipped upside down. I assumed it was kids, maybe someone bored. Then I started getting texts, random numbers, always vague. You looked tired today. Why don't you smile more? Red's a good color on you. I blocked every number, reported them to my provider, but new ones kept popping up. Different area codes, same tone. I told myself it was some sick prank, maybe someone from campus messing around. But deep down, I knew it was him. I tried to be logical. I had no proof. He'd never spoken to me, never touched me, never even left his balcony, as far as I knew. But that didn't matter, because the feeling wouldn't go away. That growing sense that I was being watched, constantly, like I was a character in a show he never turned off. I told the building manager. She was sympathetic, but said unless I had evidence of harassment, there wasn't much she could do. I asked who lived in 3B, but she said she wasn't allowed to share tenant info. Privacy laws. So I did what any paranoid, exhausted grad student would do. I bought a cheap camera and stuck it on my windowsill, not to point into his apartment, that would have been illegal, but aimed just enough to capture my balcony and anyone walking past. I left it running for 3 nights straight. On the 4th morning, I reviewed the footage. The first 2 nights were empty, just shadows from passing cars, wind blowing the blinds, but night 3. Around 2:17 a.m., I saw movement. A figure creeping along the hallway outside my apartment. The camera didn't catch his face, but I saw the hoodie. The same gray sweatpants. He stopped at my door and just stood there, not knocking, not moving, just standing for nearly 6 minutes. Then he reached out and touched the doorknob, gave it a slow turn. It was locked. He stepped back, waited a moment, then walked out of frame. I felt my entire body go cold. I took the footage to the building manager, who finally agreed to investigate. She confirmed that apartment 3B was leased to a man named Jeremy. No prior complaints, lived alone, no criminal record. But she promised to follow up with him directly and notify security. I didn't see him for a few days after that. His window stayed dark, his balcony empty. Then the power in my unit went out. It was the middle of the night. I was up late writing, and everything just shut off. My laptop battery died, the fridge went silent, and the hallway lights outside my unit flickered off one by one. At first, I thought it was a blackout, until I looked across the courtyard. Every other window was still lit, just mine, completely dark. Then I heard it. A soft knock, not at my front door, at the sliding glass door that led to my balcony. I froze. My apartment was pitch black. My phone was dead. I hadn't even realized the balcony door was unlocked. I'd cracked it earlier to let in some air. The knock came again, louder. I crouched behind the couch and waited, listening. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it was shaking my ribs.
Then I heard the click of the door handle turning. I bolted, ran through the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I could find, and ducked into the bathroom, slamming the door and locking it behind me. I stayed there for what felt like hours, listening, waiting. I never heard footsteps, never heard the door open. Just silence. Eventually, the power came back on with a loud hum. I stepped out, shaking, knife still in hand. The balcony door was locked from the inside, which didn't make sense unless he'd already been in. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I packed up and moved in with a classmate across town. I didn't even give notice. Just left, let the lease lapse, and ghosted the building. A week later, I got one final text from another unknown number. "You were prettier when you weren't scared." I blocked it. Changed my number the next day. It's been 2 years. I'm in a new city now, different building, higher floor. I keep my blinds closed at night. I check my locks twice before bed. I don't talk to my neighbors, and I never look across the courtyard.
I live in a quiet part of town, the kind of suburb where the biggest excitement most days is a kid learning to ride a bike or someone finally fixing their fence. I've lived here for about 4 years now. I work from home, freelance tech support, and live with my dog Harper, a 5-year-old black lab who basically runs my life. Every morning, like clockwork, I'd take Harper to the dog park at the edge of the neighborhood. It wasn't anything special, just a fenced-in field with 2 benches and a couple of poop bag dispensers. But it was routine, comforting even. I'd grab coffee on the way, Harper would chase her tennis ball for 45 minutes, and I'd start my day feeling like I'd done at least one productive thing. The people at the park rotated constantly. Sometimes it was regulars, a couple of older ladies with tiny yappy dogs, or parents letting their kids burn energy with their golden retrievers. Other times it was strangers just passing through, but we all stuck to ourselves mostly until I met him. It was a Monday morning, cold enough that my breath fogged in the air. I got there a little later than usual, 8:15-ish. And there was just one guy already inside the gate. He had a huge German shepherd, lean and alert, the kind that looks more military than pet. The guy was tall, thin, maybe late 40s, sunglasses, a dark hoodie, gloves. Something about him seemed stiff. But when I stepped inside, he looked over and gave me a polite nod. Didn't say anything. Just kept watching his dog pace in a tight circle by the fence. I let Harper off her leash and gave her the ball. She took off instantly, loving the space. The guy's dog didn't interact with her, just circled. The guy didn't interact with me either, not once. I shrugged it off. Some people just want space. No big deal. The next day, he was there again. Same time, same clothes. Same silent nod, and the day after that, and the next. Always standing in the same corner. Dog never played, just paced, never even barked. Just kept its eyes on Harper like it was tracking her. By the 5th day, I was a little weirded out. I tried making small talk, asked what his dog's name was. He didn't answer at first, just turned his head slightly and said, "Ace." No smile, no return question. Just that. I let it go, but I stopped staying as long at the park. The following Monday, I tried switching it up, went earlier than usual. Park was empty. I tossed the ball with Harper for a solid 20 minutes, enjoying the rare peace. Then I saw him. He was outside the gate, standing by the trees. Just watching. No dog with him this time, just him. We made eye contact, and I swear he didn't blink. He didn't come in. Just stood there until Harper and I left. That night, I couldn't shake it. I told myself it was nothing. Coincidence. Maybe he lived nearby, Maybe I was reading into it too much, but then I started seeing him other places. At the grocery store, 3 aisles over, not shopping, just walking. At the gas station, sitting in a parked car 2 spots away, not pumping gas, always alone, always watching. I didn't tell anyone yet, mostly because I didn't have anyone close enough to confide in. I'm not married, no siblings in town. I called my mom once a week, but what was I gonna say? Hey mom, I think this dude from the dog park is following me. So I did what I usually do when I'm spiraling. I kept it all in my head. A few days later, I was walking Harper after dinner. Sun had already gone down and most houses were dark. Our neighborhood's quiet, very little foot traffic, and the dog loves her night walks. We were about halfway around the block when I saw someone across the street, tall, wearing a hoodie, standing still. Harper stopped too. She stared across the street, ears perked, body stiff. Didn't bark, just stared. The figure didn't move. I tried to act calm, pulled Harper's leash, crossed the street in the opposite direction, and walked faster. By the time I looked back, he was gone. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning I found something in my mailbox, no postage, just a folded sheet of paper. On it, printed in bold black letters, "You should watch your dog more carefully." That was it. No name, no return address. I immediately called the police, filed a report. They were polite, asked if I'd seen anyone suspicious. I told them about the man from the park. They said they'd do a drive-by patrol and check if anyone matched the description. They also said, without a direct threat, there wasn't much else they could do. It felt like a joke. I stopped going to the dog park, started taking Harper out only during the day, in crowded areas. I looked over my shoulder constantly, checked every car that parked on my street. And for a little while, it worked. A few days passed. Then a week. Then 10 days. No sign of him. Then Harper got sick. Started throwing up, refused her food, wouldn't move from her bed. I rushed her to the vet. They ran tests and asked if she could have gotten into anything. Rat poison, antifreeze, anything like that. I said no, of course not. I was always careful. I barely even used cleaner around the house. The vet looked at me and said, "Well, she didn't get it here." It hit me all at once. Someone had fed her something. I lost it. Told the vet everything. They didn't know what to say other than they'd keep her overnight and try to flush her system. I barely slept. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to Harper barking. I jolted up, completely confused, then remembered she was still at the vet. I stood in the middle of my living room, half asleep and freaked out, and that's when I saw the shadow move across my front window. I dropped to the floor, crawled behind the couch, heart racing. My porch light wasn't on. I couldn't see a face. But I saw the outline, the same tall frame, same hoodie, just standing at my front door. Not knocking, just there. I called 911, whispered every word. The dispatcher told me to stay hidden. Officers were already en route. The figure didn't move, didn't try to come in, just waited. By the time I heard the sirens, he was gone. They found footprints in the front yard, large men's boots, traced around the side of the house, then disappeared at the sidewalk. No prints in the backyard, nothing missing, no broken locks. But the cops finally took me seriously. They reviewed camera footage from neighbors. Someone caught him walking away, face mostly covered. Still couldn't ID him. I showed them the dog park security feed I'd pulled from earlier weeks, and sure enough, there he was. Clear as day, watching me from across the field. Same hoodie, same blank stare. They opened an official case, told me to stay vigilant. I installed cameras around the house, changed my locks, slept with a bat next to the bed. Harper pulled through, thank God. She's healthy now, back to normal. but I'm not, because sometimes I still get that feeling, like someone's watching me, like someone's just out of sight. And last week, another note showed up. No envelope, no return address. Just 4 words. Why'd you stop coming? I used to live in a basement apartment during my senior year of college. It wasn't glamorous, but the rent was dirt cheap, and it was close to campus, which was all I cared about. The unit was tucked beneath a crumbling old house a few blocks from the main strip. Barely any sunlight made it through the narrow windows, and the front entrance looked more like a cellar door than an apartment. But I was 22, broke, and just trying to graduate. It was a 1-bedroom with a weird layout. The kitchen was wedged into a corner like an afterthought, and the bedroom had this awkward bump in the wall, like a big rectangular column had just been built right into the room for no reason. I figured it was some kind of support beam or leftover from a renovation. Ugly, sure, but not something I planned to obsess over. Until I did. For the first few weeks, everything was normal. I was juggling classes, a part-time job at a bookstore, and a thesis I didn't even want to write. I spent most nights studying or watching horror movies to unwind. The building was old, and I expected weird noises, pipes clanking, the occasional shuffle of footsteps from the tenants upstairs. But then the wall started making noise. It began as a soft tapping, almost like fingers drumming lightly on wood. Just tap, 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 always in threes, always from that same bump in the wall. At first, I assumed it was the plumbing, or maybe even mice. Old building, after all. I told myself not to overthink it, but it never happened during the day. Only at night. Always after midnight. One night, I paused my movie and just sat in the dark, listening. It was just past 2 a.m. and the apartment was dead silent until I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Then a low scrape. Not loud. More like something dragging inside the wall, something with nails. I turned on every light in the apartment that night and slept with headphones in. The dreams started not long after. Each one was the same. I'd be lying in my bed, paralyzed, unable to move. Something would be watching me from the corner, right where the wall bulged. I couldn't see a face, just a tall black silhouette. No eyes, no mouth, just staring. Every time I woke up from those dreams, I'd be drenched in sweat and breathing hard. Once I woke up to find that I'd turned in my sleep and was facing the wall bump. It felt like my subconscious was trying to draw my attention to it. One night, I decided to record myself while I slept. Just to prove to myself it was in my head. I set my phone on the nightstand and let it run. In the morning, I listened to the audio. 8 hours of static and soft breathing until 3:42 a.m. A low creaking sound. Then a breath. Close to the mic, not mine. It was deeper, throatier, like someone else had leaned over my bed and just breathed. I nearly dropped my phone. I deleted the recording and told myself it was some kind of glitch, maybe interference. I went to class, acted normal, but when I got home that night, I found the closet door open. I never leave it open. I'm the kind of person who can't sleep unless all the doors are closed. Closet, bathroom, front door, double locked, always. Inside the wall next to the closet was scratched. Deep, uneven gouges, like someone had taken a key or a nail and raked it down the drywall. I didn't sleep there that night. I packed a bag and stayed on my friend Emma's couch. I didn't explain everything, just said the place felt off and I needed a break. She offered to let me stay the week, no questions asked. When I finally went back, it was daytime. I figured the light would make it feel less creepy. I walked in, and everything looked normal until I noticed the edge of the wall bump. There was a seam, not part of the drywall, more like a panel, a square section that didn't quite match the rest. It had faint nail marks along the edges like it had been pried open before. My stomach dropped. I grabbed a flashlight and wedged a screwdriver into the seam. It resisted at first, but then popped open with a soft crack. Behind it was a shallow crawl space, about 2 feet deep, lined with crumbling insulation and dust-covered beams, and something else, a stained blanket, empty water bottles, a small candle burned almost to the base, a plastic fork, a wadded-up pair of socks. Someone had been living inside my wall. I stood there, flashlight trembling in my hand, unable to process what I was seeing. Then I saw the scratches on the inside of the panel, deep ones, more desperate, like someone had clawed at it from inside. I slammed the panel shut, backed out of the room, and left again. This time, I went to the police. They sent an officer and a detective. I showed them everything, the panel, the space, the items inside. They were polite, but I could tell they didn't think it was serious. Probably thought I was another college kid with too much caffeine and too many horror movies. They bagged the items and told me they'd look into it. I never heard back. I moved out 2 days later, broke the lease, lost my deposit. Didn't care. I just wanted to be somewhere with windows. A month went by. I found a new place on the 3rd floor of a modern building. Bright, clean, quiet. I started sleeping again. Then I got the text. It was from a number I didn't recognize. You shouldn't have opened it. That's all it said. I blocked the number instantly. I didn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? That I thought a person had been living in my wall and now they had my number? Weeks passed. No follow-up texts, no sightings. But I stopped sleeping again because sometimes, late at night, when everything's still, I swear I can hear it, just beneath the drywall. Tap, tap, scrape. And when I do, I don't check. I don't move. I just lay still and pretend I'm not there, because I don't know who or what was in that wall. And I'm afraid if I look again, they'll be closer.